a bit of a problem, as you can see there, as they swing into the pit bend. That's caused a bit of chaos over there. It's also brought out the red flags.
001 national champion. 1993 is Phil Morgan 001, and in trouble there, 497, and literally being rolled on the infield. That's Piers Cockrell. Did a spin, got a hit, did a roll. It is contact, as we said, as they go through. We bring them back onto race control. The yellow flag drivers stay in their position. The position they're assuming when the yellow flag goes out. As they head through the final bend. A star of the future, no doubt. We'll line them up, warming up lap, restarting again. So around in great order. The whole of the race to run. 12 laps.
Welcome to the Autospeed podcast, home of stock car and banger racing in the southwest.
Drivers, start your engine.
Love the vans.
Warm in here, I can see why you don't seem so keen to get off home.
A lot of people would just probably hear 2 or 3 words and switch it off anyway.
Welcome to the Autospeed podcast. I'm Crispen Rosevear. This week, as part of the build-up to the next Autospeed race meeting, which takes place this Sunday, 26th of March, at the United Downs Raceway St Day, the podcast will take a trip back in time, as we recall some wonderful memories of a much-missed and long-standing member of the Autospeed family. Bill Dalley was commentator and announcer for Autospeed for more than 50 years. From his early involvement with Speedway, Bill was encouraged by Autospeed's flamboyant promoter Trevor Redmond to concentrate on stock car racing. Bill commentated at each of the 3 venues in Cornwall where Autospeed staged stock car racing down the years, St Day, St Austell and St Column, as well as at a variety of other circuits, notably at Newton Abbot, Smeethart, Ringwood, Reading, and even at the great Wembley Stadium when Trevor Redmond took stock car racing to the capital in 1974. When Autospeed passed from the Redmond family to the new kids on the block, myself and Andrew Carter, at the start of the new millennium, Bill was ready to hand up the mic. But with some persuasion and encouragement, Andrew and I insisted that Bill continue as that reassuring voice of Autospeed. With each passing season, Bill repeatedly insisted he was going to retire, but with 50 years of outstanding service to the sport looming on the horizon, he reached that milestone and completed a couple more seasons for good measure before failing health brought an end to his involvement. In this episode, I'm joined by Neil Truran. Both Neil and I grew up listening to the distinct voice of Bill Dalley, who provided the soundtrack to those formative years when we each fell in love with stock car racing. On occasions, some years ago, both Neil and I have faced the daunting prospect of standing in for Bill when he was unavailable to commentate. It's not an easy task, not at all, which is why so many of us hold Bill in such high esteem, for he seemingly made this difficult role appear as simple as, well, just talking aloud.
Right then, the F2 final, the stock car final, 25 laps this time. Warming up lap.
50 years and more commentating with Autospeed. What are your first recollections of Bill?
How long have we got?
As long as it takes.
Obviously, being involved with the sport for, this will be my 60th year, there are just so many things. I mean, he was the voice, wasn't he? He was the voice of stock car racing. He could make a 7-car stock car race sound like a 32-car world final. You know, those Tuesday nights at St Austell in the late 70s, early 80s, when it was very, very poorly attended, we used to only sort of get sometimes 7 or 10 cars. He would just make it sound like there was always 25 or 30 out there. Not many people can do that.
No, and no, that's a very fair point. I think because both you and I have sat in the chair, as it were, of as a stand-in when Bill's not been available. I think we're both fairly well equipped to be able to understand just how difficult it is.
It's not easy. Ask Dave Doubledecks.
Fortunately, we haven't heard too much from Dave for a while.
Just as well.
No, not easy at all. My own early memories, I think, possibly at Newton Abbot. I think the sense of anticipation at Newton Abbot, when you were stood or sat at Newton Abbot, and you'd look across to the old commentary box, that sort of like pigeon loft over in the corner.
We used to call it the Punch and Judy hut.
Yes, another.
And you could just you could see Bill and Malcolm Ross, of course, in the early days.
Yeah, Malcolm was the steward.
Yeah, that's just because there's only room between people in there. That was it.
Possibly 3 with Anthony Hutchins on lap scoring duties. Yeah.
Well, I think he was like at the bottom when he sort of peered over their shoulders, stood on the steps.
Yeah, not a lot of room, but the anticipation of when the hatch opened on that, and you knew you were just about ready for Grand Parade and start time, and then Bill would start speaking, and you knew it was start time.
Yeah, once he picked up that famous mic and, like I say, did those first few words, that was it. Everybody was looking at the box. They were drawn to him straight away. You know, in these in his heyday, he was the best, no doubt about that. You know, he could say he could make a dull race sound exciting. He was very informative with the sport back then. And a lot of people followed him and liked him, definitely. He was a likeable chap. I got to know him very well, obviously, over a period of a long time, especially those couple of years when he was unable to drive, and, you know, he used to get a lift from me to Newton Abbot. So I got to know him on a pretty good basis, really. Mm-hmm.
Are you of the understanding that in the beginning, Bill was initially involved in the speedway?
Yeah, I mean, he always told me that he got involved with the racing when the road cars were out on track. There was not enough bikes to make a decent meeting up, so people were invited to take their road cars on.
This would be like time trials.
Yes,
yeah.
like time trials. And no, it wasn't time trials because there was more than one out there at a time.
Oh right, so it's almost like a race then.
It was almost like a race, and they started hitting each other. The road cars, he told me, the road cars started hitting each other and trying to spin each other out. And that's where he says that Trevor was the first one to introduce banger racing, and they called it Bangers and Smash.
Of course, yeah.
And that's, he reckons, where bangers originated from, was the road cars at this speedway event, trying to take each other out and put each other in the fence.
Okay. And the speedway story, as I remember it, was that Bill was perhaps announcing at different speedway venues, and then I don't know whether it was Trevor Redmond that said to me, or whether it was Bill that was making this claim. I'm not really too sure now. It's a long time ago, of course. That effectively Bill was headhunted. Come to the racing, please.
He told me that he'd done some speedway at Plymouth and Pennycross, obviously, and Paul.
Okay.
Paul Speedway. I remember him telling me that one night.
And then whether he was headhunted, whether the opportunity arose, but then after a while the speedway passed, his involvement there ceased, and it was the stock cars, and then that led to, you know, all these 6 decades of.
I was in there for a long time. Yeah. I would love to know just how many races he actually commentated, even finals, semi-finals. I'd just love to know. It must be
countless.
Yeah, absolutely countless. Yeah, definitely.
And I think that we have 1 or 2 memories here on sort of memory aids, as it were, including the World Championship programme from Wembley. And I think that when Trevor Redmond staged those 2 meetings at Wembley nearly 50 years ago in 1974, then for Bill to commentate there, I think that was certainly a big feather.
Yeah, one in June, one in August, wasn't it? Both unforgettable meetings. And what an achievement for him to go to Wembley twice. I think West Ham had been to Wembley twice in 150 years. So well done, Bill. You went there twice in 2 months.
Yeah, to be part of the commentary team at such an established and such a well-known venue and such a significant day in the history of our sport. To think stock car racing took place at Wembley.
I know, an amazing honour for him. And when Trevor went on originally saying he's going to take Formula 2 stock car racing to Wembley, everybody thought that's not going to happen, but it did. And I suppose if there's ever one man that was going to pull it off, it's always going to be him, wasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. With I think that in my sort of discussions with Trevor about those times, I think that Trevor enjoyed a really good relationship with Sir Arthur Elvin, who was, a very significant, prominent figure at Wembley Stadium, and I think that he able to use those contacts and possibly rode for Wembley himself in his Speedway days.
That definitely got him in the door. His Speedway connections definitely got him in at Wembley. Definitely, nobody else would have been able to do that.
No, it is just to try to imagine that in this day and age, it's truly unthinkable.
Yeah, it is unthinkable, unfortunately. Yeah. and on both occasions, obviously you've got to have a lot of people at the old Wembley's made look full, but there was good crowds. It was well supported. Mm-hmm. Very well supported.
Considering the how big Wembley was and the crowds you would get for a typical big stock car event compared to how many people could have squeezed in Wembley, then it's quite an undertaking to try to attempt. So fantastic to look back at that. I think as well, what we also have here is a very old Formula 2 review. This is from October 1976. So just a month or so after the World Championship final for Formula 2s was at St Austell for the second time, and I think it that also speaks volumes to my mind that Bill had a double page feature in the stock car stalwart section of the magazine. Mm-hmm. You would typically expect that to be an interview with a driver, but there was Bill, who was such a prominent figure in those days, as much as the drivers.
Yeah, definitely. And who would have thought he would have gone on to have done so many meetings and carried on as long as he could until only his poor health sort of stopped him in the end, really.
Yeah,
travelling and not feeling feeling his best on a lot of days, but he kept going as long as he could. Fair play to him.
Oh, very much. And I think that if I think back to, we are jumping around from start to finish and in between here, but when Andrew Carter and I, when we took over the running of Autospeed, and we had a meeting with the staff, which would have been February 2000, I think it would have been, just before our first meeting. And when Pat Redmond explained what was happening, Bill was one of the first people that evening to come to Andrew and I and say, well, you'll be bringing in your own people to, your own staff, your own officials, and that would mark the end of my involvement. And Andrew and I were quick to say, no, Bill, anything but, we want you to continue. And I think
definitely.
I think Bill was, possibly a little bit surprised, but it was always our intention because he was such a big part of Autospeed. We wanted him to be part of that.
Yeah, and very good at his job. Had that distinctive voice, as we've already said. So why wouldn't you want him as part of the family? Yeah,
very much. It's sort of you would have been in race control at different times, the same as I spent a lot of time in race control, and I think that one of Bill's greatest skills, no matter how much bedlam, how much mayhem, how frantic activity was in race control, whether you had drivers bursting in complaining about results or a decision that had gone against them, whatever was going on in race control, Bill had that supreme quality to be able to blank all that out. And as soon as he flicked the switch on the mic and started talking to the public, that they had no knowledge of the fact that there could have been mayhem going on in the background.
I don't know how he used to do that, because I know exactly what you're saying. I've seen him, down at St Austell, down at St Day, like you say, people have gone into the commentary box and they weren't invited in, kicking off, and it's just like nothing was happening. I do remember thinking, how can you just sit there and not turn around and say, get out of my race control, or shut up?
Yeah, just be quiet.
Just completely blanket right over his head. Takes a special person to do that.
Yeah, and as well, letting in some of the trade secrets. Once Bill turned the mic off, then he wasn't short of giving his opinion on a few things. But he never let that mask slide when he was actually speaking to the public. And I think that was a tremendous quality. As you say, the two of us have sat there on the mic. It's not easy at all. It's a very, very difficult job, and for him to have made it look so good is quite a
second nature to him, wouldn't it? He must have been born with a microphone in his hand or something.
Very much. I mean, some of the other memories I have from being in race control, I think, would be when Trevor would suddenly unearth a bundle of unsold programs. And whether it would be at Newton Abbot and shout up the stairs to Bill, or whether he would come up the back steps at race control at the old St Austell Stadium at the O'Connell Stadium at St Austell and just say to Bill, encourage a few more of the programmes to be sold. That was a comedy moment.
Weekly comedy moment.
He was there frantic to sell programmes, and Bill was able to make it sound like even if you had a programme, you still wanted to go and buy a second one.
It's only 4 pages, it's only 50p, but Trevor didn't want to have 2 left over.
No.
He wanted to sell every last one.
Yeah, very, very true. Talking about the programme, there was a day when I had written something a little bit close to the knuckle in a programme at Newton Abbot. And I remember, you were laughing, I think you know the story. I remember turning up at Newton Abbot, sort of blissfully walking in, only to find Bill with a pair of scissors, Trevor with a pair of scissors, and the two of them raging at me with what I'd written. And there they were, chopping out bits of the programme.
I remember it well. Yeah, very well.
And people that bought a programme that night, they were more interested in what they couldn't read.
Of course, yeah.
More interested in what they couldn't read than what was actually left in the programme for them to go. So, I wasn't overly popular that day.
Can you remember what it was that got Trevor's backup so much and Bill's backup, which I can't remember what it was. I know they were in there cutting the bits out in the office.
Yeah, I can remember in essence. I think what had happened was that the Dave Whitmarsh, who was around at the time, Dave Whitmarsh was doing an interview for each programme with a top driver, or not necessarily a top driver, just an interview with one of the drivers each programme, and Trevor, being a little bit slow on paying, had not settled his bill with the printers for a little while. And then the printers sent a statement, and by the time the statement come through and he was several editions behind, he then had quite a bill to pay. And he said, well, the cost of these programmes is too dear. Took issue with the printers. The printers said, but you're doing a larger programme because you're running these interviews and so on and so forth. And so Trevor had said to me, well, that's it. We're going to put a stop to that, and we're going to go back to having the small programme again. So I was extremely disappointed and angry, and I took that out, vented my anger in what I wrote.
Yeah, we're calling it.
Yeah, saying that, really, sad to say, this programme, which I thought was good, turned into something like a magazine, was going to go back to just being a standard programme, and I thought that this was a poor move, and I was very hypercritical as a young person, and the next thing I know, it ended up quite literally on the cutting room floor. They sat there with the scissors. I think I had to leave the office a bit sharpish before the scissors came in my direction, really. Some great stories. I remember as well saying about Newton Abbot, and you say about, there were times when Bill wasn't too well, and you've given him a lift, I've given him a lift, and whatever. But I also remember there was a period of Bill doing the commentary at Newton Abbot on a Wednesday night when he was driving. He was going with his wife, and then driving back after Newton Abbot. I perhaps shouldn't say this now, and perhaps you wouldn't get away with it now with so many cameras on the road. But I think Bill and I used to have a little bit of a race back down the A38, and the following week he would always say to me that his wife would always chastise him for trying to race me back down on a Wednesday night, coming back down.
That wasn't really a race, was it? He was in a 1.25 Opel Kadett automatic, and you had a 1600 Capri. That's not a race in my book.
Some people had to have an advantage. Oh dear. Yeah, some of the memories from Bill's time, and of course it was not that long ago that we had the Bill Dalley tribute evening. That's what I'm saying. It's not that long ago. Over a decade ago.
I thought it was about 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, just over a decade ago. And I think that was a great evening at the St Austell Brewery Visitor Centre. Lots of people there.
Yeah, I mean, it was packed that night, wouldn't it? I mean, that just goes to show the popularity of Bill Dalley and the great memories that he's left us with. I mean, we couldn't have got any more people in there that night. I think we were allowed to have 100, and I think there was 157. We were really pushed our luck that night. It was a blinging tight squeeze, to say the least.
It was,
but it was a great night, and I'm glad that we done it. In memory of Bill, and I'm glad that this trophy's kept going, because unfortunately what happens with memorial trophies or shields, they tend to have lots and lots of interest for the first 3 to 5 years, maybe 6 or 7, and then they disappear into the wilderness, which is a shame really, because nobody sort of has the interest or inclination or COVID comes along.
Yeah.
That you can't control that one. But that's a shame. But it's good to see that this trophy still, still well supported by the spectators anyway. And most of the drivers that I think race even Formula 2s today, maybe a few exceptions, know who Bill Dalley was and what it's all about.
Indeed, for someone to have clocked up more than 50 years in a role, in such a pivotal and such an important role as the commentator, as the announcer, it's an incredible achievement. I think I think, as you say, I think the trophy is very, very important. Even though the composition of driver today, because there's lots of youngsters racing, and because it's 10 years or more since we lost Bill. Even though it is the change in face, and a lot of the drivers now would not actually have been commentated on by Bill because they're so young, there are still plenty of people out there who have the memories of those days that still makes it poignant and still makes it special.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, if some of the drivers that race today, Bill didn't commentate, I mean, he may have certainly commentated on their fathers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or older brothers or whatever, so...
Very much the case with the the family element to our sport, the second and third generations of drivers. Yeah, that's a fair point to think that drivers racing today, whether it's their parents that were racing and Bill was commentating them, yeah, that's also a very fair point. So that's coming up this Sunday at St Day. The top prize for the Formula 2s, and the current holder is Joe Marquand, who started the season so well at Smeathart. Joe did well. I think that Joe, by his own admission, will accept that the wet weather played into his hands.
So if you get a bit of water down, he loves it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And the forecast isn't brilliant at the moment, is it?
No, whether Joe's doing a rain dance and he's going to continue that fine start to the season. It'd be interesting to see how things play out on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's nice the fact that obviously he's a Cornish lad. His dad raced, his granddad raced, so it's nice that he won it last year, really, isn't it? Kept in Cornwall for another 12 months.
Yeah,
it's normally a very unpredictable race, isn't it? Because the weather has a lot of...
The weather's going to have a huge bearing on it.
Yeah.
It's not, it's typically at the start of the season. By then you haven't got much of a form guide, and some drivers are getting used to new cars. And so, it's there's an interesting lineup for Sunday's meeting. It's not overly populated with cars, but there's enough there to make a race, and it's not very easy to pick a winner, I don't think.
Modern day Formula 2s now, in my opinion, it's very difficult to pick a winner. Sometimes I go in the middle and we have a bit of a sideways bet on the winner of the final. And because there's so many good cars out there now, there isn't a lot of tuttle out there used to be years ago. Most of the guys have got pretty good kit. It's so hard to pick a winner now because the speeds, obviously you've got the red tops and superstars are marginally faster than maybe a low blue or yellow, but it's not like a second. No. It's very close now, not like it was 50 years ago.
Yeah, the difference between the top stars and the lower graders along, a little while back was extreme. And now there's the lap times will tell you that story. Yeah,
so if you've got a guy who can drive and it's a quick white or yellow, and he's got good track speed, the chance of red top catching him without a yellow flag is very, very remote.
For sure, I think that's it's going to be interesting stuff on Sunday with the Formula 2s. Even though, as we say, we always would like there to be more cars, but the entry that we've got is sufficiently diverse and sufficiently interesting that picking the winner on Sunday will be an interesting time. Well, there we go then. A few memories of the great Bill Dalley, 50 plus years commentating. It's a fantastic achievement. Thanks, Neil, for being with us.
No, you're welcome. It's always nice to look back, and a lot of people call me a dinosaur because I'm always going on about the olden days, and my own personal opinion and the stock car racing was a lot better in the 60s and 70s, but that's just my personal view. But everything moves forward, doesn't it? You have to have progress, and obviously I still don't expect to see cars out there racing with side valve engines, not in BriSCA Formula 2 anyway, in Heritage obviously, but the 60s and 70s for me, and I think if Bill was still here would say they were unbelievable memory, unique memories, and must have been great fun for him to commentate on with so many stars in the West Country back in that sort of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's look forward to Sunday and remember Bill in the best possible way. And thanks again for being with us, Neil.
Don't forget your pound.
Absolutely. Those then were a few memories of Bill Dalley, who will be remembered this Sunday, 26th of March at St Day, when the BriSCA Formula 2 Stock Cars race for the Voice of Autospeed trophy, which is an iconic award, an old-fashioned microphone mounted on a wooden plinth. This will be the 12th year that the trophy has been raced for in Bill's memory. As mentioned, there is an intriguing look to the entry of Formula 2s, with a decent number of drivers commanding attention as potential winners on Sunday afternoon. The mini stocks will get their season underway at St Day on Sunday, and there is a decent entry of back-to-basic bangers who often serve up plenty of fun and entertainment, with some races and then a King of Crash Destruction Derby to end the meeting. Add into the mix the latest round of races for the infants in the BriSCA Micro F2 Stock Cars, and that is the lineup for the United Downs Raceway St Day this Sunday, 26th of March. Remember, discounted advance tickets are on sale until Saturday lunchtime, and then the Grand Parade will be the first event on the programme on Sunday, just ahead of start time at 1 o'clock. See you at St Day.
If you've enjoyed Autospeed Podcast, home of stock car and banger racing in the Southwest, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for future podcasts.